Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can all of you hear me?
Walaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Sheikh Sajid, we can hear you.
One of you also just WhatsApp on the group so that others know that we're starting inshallah. Jazakallah.
Inshallah, I will do it, Sheikh Sajid. Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah wa kafa. Wa salamun ala ibadihi allazina istafa. Amma ba'd. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. So today, inshallah, we start the Surah Kahf. And again, I want to begin with the two ahadith al-barakah that pertain to Surah Kahf that we did last time as well. The first hadith is that the person who learns and memorizes and inculcates the first 10 ayat of this surah, and such a person will be saved from the fitna of Dajjal. Now, the precursors of the fitna of Dajjal have already started. We're already living in an age of fitna. Allah Ta'ala knows best when Dajjal would come in 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. But if it takes 10 ayat to save yourself, and we're beginning the first 10 ayats today, inshallah. So a person should make niyat, intention to memorize and learn and understand and reflect on these first 10 ayats. This is an incredible fitna of Dajjal. And today, we find that many Muslims, they fall prey to the fitna of modernity, ideology, secularism, humanism, liberalism, fashion, media. These are small fitnas. And if so many Muslims can fall into such small fitnas, then just imagine how many Muslims are going to fall in this fitna of Dajjal. And the second hadith is that if a person happens to live in the time of Dajjal, if they ever come across Dajjal, if they can recite these 10 verses of Surah Kahf, 10 ayat, then Dajjal will not have any power to impress upon them. And it's such a big fitna of Dajjal, and all you have to do is to recite 10 ayat of Surah Kahf. And only somebody who knew these ayat really well, memorized them, and also lived their life according to these ayat, they will remember to recite it if they come across Dajjal. This is the power of Kalamullah, power of the Arabic Quran, that even if you recite it, and you'll be able to save yourself. So the ayat will begin, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi allazi anzala ala abdihi al-kitab wa lam yaj'al lahu iwaja. That all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has sent down upon his servant the book, and he has not made inside that book any deviance. So this surah begins with the word Alhamd. There are some surahs in the Quran which begin with this word Alhamd, and this is significant. This is important. For example, Surah Fatiha begins with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Surah Fatir, Surah Kahf. And one of the wisdom the scholars have written about these surahs, which begin with Alhamd, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that my servant will not be able to fulfill the right of my hamd. And for this reason, I will mention my hamd on my own. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself mentions his praise, mentions the hamd. We as humans will not be able to fulfill the right of Allah's praise. Imam Rabbani rahmatullah alayh, he has written that if a person, they praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they try their level best, they will never be able to fulfill the right of Allah's praise. Because Allah Ta'ala, His majesty, His greatness is beyond human imagination. One cannot attain to that level. No matter how much sincerity, how much ikhlas a person has in their ibadah, in their praise, in their hamd, still one is unable to fulfill the right of Allah's ibadah. In fact, what about us when the Prophet himself would say that Allahumma la uhsi sana'an alayk anta kama asnayta ala nafsik. That, oh Allah, I will not be able to praise you as is your haqq. And Allah, you are as you have praised yourself to be. You are as you have praised yourself to be. And this praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very important. To begin with the praise and the hamd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what we will inshallah be doing, every word is very important here. The placement of the word itself. So we want to not just go through quickly and finish the surah. Rather, we want to be able to reflect on the words, on the meaning, try to understand the deep meanings that the scholars have written about the words and then the ayat, and then try to incorporate lessons for all of us so that we can implement. So by the time we end this surah, it's not that just we know the translation, the story, the 5 stories that we mentioned last time, but we also understand the deeper significance of these ayat, and we can try to benefit. One of the other of reciting Quran, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah in his kitab Ihya Ulumuddin, he has mentioned 9 adab, 9 etiquettes. And one of them, he says, is that try to make every ayat specific for yourself. And what he means by that is that imagine that this ayat is intended for me. Allah wrote this ayat for me. And in fact, that's not just imagination, that is the reality. For every ayat of the Quran is intended for me. It's specific for myself. Can we talking about Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam? We're talking about the people of Kahf. Can we talking about Quraysh Makkah? But that story is actually meant for me. That there is some lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to take from that ayah. So it's specifically addressed to me. And one should approach the Quran, every ayat of the Quran with that mindset that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to me and there is a deeper lesson for me. And when you have that approach, then you will try to not only understand what the lesson is, but also feel that ayah more and be able to implement the lesson which is there inside that ayah. So we should try to make this personal, make every ayat specific for ourselves, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing me in these ayat. Alhamdulillah, that all praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right at the very start, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned his name. If you want to summarize the first section, the first ruku of this surah, the first 8 ayats, in fact, the first ruku can be divided into 2 parts. Ayat number 1 till 8, and then verse number 9 till 12. 12 ayats in this first ruku. In the first 8 ayat, the summary is that the surah begins with the praise of Allah Ta'ala, that all praise belongs to Allah Ta'ala, speaks about Allah Ta'ala. And it also mentions the prophethood of the Prophet Sallallahu, the Risalat, which is our second pillar in our Iman. And thirdly, it establishes the truth of the Quran, that the Quran is a book which has no deviation, no crookedness. It's a straight book. It's a book of Hidayah. It's a book of warning. It's a book of glad tiding. It's a book of radiance. It's a book of illumination. And it's a book which is going to nullify all the invalid beliefs, which is going to reject the beliefs of the mushrikeen in Makkah, the Jews, the Christians. All invalid beliefs will be rejected by the Quran. And it will be the ayat, the surah will be addressing the Prophet ﷺ, that you preach this message of the Quran to the people, but your task is just to preach, to teach, to share this knowledge. Hidayat is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this life, every person will be tested by Allah. Allah has beautified this life in a manner where things will try to entice you, will try to attract you, will try to tempt you. And the whole point of this dunya is a test, is an exam. And people who pass this test, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless them with eternal joy and happiness in the akhirah. This is the summary, the basic summary of the first few ayat of this surah. And then in the second part of the ruku, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins the story of Ashab-e Kahf. That this amazing, strange, interesting event. And the maqsad is that this is not just one event, but there are so many other amazing, interesting events that happen. So many other amazing creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as one example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then coins and relates the story of the Ashab-e Kahf, which again is to highlight the amazingness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the story begins. So this is the summary of the first ruku. So here the very first thing is about hamd, belonging to Allah Ta'ala. And here Allah Ta'ala uses his own personal name, Lillahi. that all praise belongs to Allah, all worship belongs to Allah. La ilaha illallah. This is what we call uluhiyat, ilahiyat, that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. And interestingly, if you want to look at the rabt between the starting and the ending, a lot of surahs, this is one of the mu'jiza, the ijaz of the Quran, how the surahs are structured. And many times there is a rabt, a relationship between the starting and the ending. When the surah will end, it mentions the rububiyat of Allah Ta'ala. Rububiyat means Rab. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the caretaker, the guardian of everything. Not just the creator, he is the cherisher, the nurturer, the nourisher of everything. The surah ends on that note. That Faman kana yarju liqa'a rabbihi. It's beginning with ilahiyat lillah and ending with rububiyat. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the cherisher and the nurturer, the nourisher of the entire creation. A lot have been said about this word Allah, and one of the meanings is that to amaze someone. That Allah Ta'ala is that amazing being that it amazes a person, it's beyond a person's intellect. And it's a name which combines the attributes of majesty as well as the attributes of mercy. And it's such a powerful name that as long as there is even a single person on the face of this earth who takes the name Allah, Qiyamah will not come. Then the day of judgment will not come. The world will continue to exist. And only when people stop taking the name of Allah on this earth, such that there's not even one person who takes the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that will indicate the demise of this earth. In other words, this word is so powerful, it's linked with the perpetuity of this world. That this world will continue for as long as people take the name of Allah. And from here, our mashayikh, they derive a deeper point. They say that if the word Allah is the cause for the perpetuity of this world in a physical sense, then even greater is the barakah, the spiritual blessings of this name. Whoever takes the name Allah in their heart will be the cause of the perpetuity of their spiritual life, their spiritual health. This name can revive the hearts of a person. Remembrance of the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can ignite the flame of Allah's love in a person's heart, can bring about a transformation in their qalb, can spiritually revive a dead heart of a person. This is the reason why many scholars have said that the Isme Azam, the greatest name, is the name Allah. There is a riwayat which mentions that if anyone calls upon Allah using Isme Azam, they make dua to Allah using the Isme Azam, then the dua will be accepted. Guaranteed. And there's a lot of opinions that what is the greatest name of, what is this Isme Azam? And according to the majority of the scholars and people like Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah and others, they say that the Isme Azam is this name Allah. This is the personal name. And the other names are the Sifati names of Allah. They're the attributive names. This is the personal name. In other way, you can understand that the other attributes, the Asma'ul Husna, they are names through which you can attain a takhalluk. You can adorn and beautify yourself with those attributive names of Allah. But this name Allah is a name for attaining ta'alluq with Allah Ta'ala. It helps a person to attain a connection, a relationship, to form a bond with Allah, to come close and near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why one should try to remember this name abundantly. Wazkur isma rabbik. Allah says in the Quran as well that remember his name, the name of your Lord, وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبَتِيلًا, exclusively and to the exclusion of everything else. So we mention the name Allah. This brings several spiritual blessings. Alhamdulillahi alladhi anzala ala abdihi al-kitab. That praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has sent down the book upon his servant. Now, one point to remember here is that right at the very first line of this surah, Allah Ta'ala is mentioning his beloved Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam. Here, abdihi is referring to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah sent this kitab to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the word that is being used about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is abd. Abd. Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam was a Nabi, was a Prophet, was a messenger. But here Allah Ta'ala is mentioning the abadiyat of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the reason is that one of the greatest rank, and in fact, the greatest rank a person can attain in this dunya, spiritual rank, is to be a true abd, a servant and a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the reason why even in the kalma, when we testify, we say, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. We first testify to the abdiyat of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was a servant and slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we testify to the risalat, the prophethood of Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam. So this is the highest spiritual maqam, to be an abd of Allah. In contrast, many people, they become abd of their own nafs, abdun nafs, slaves of their nafs. And there is no freedom. You cannot, there's no absolute freedom. The choice is simply this, whether a person becomes the abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they become abd of ghairullah. They become slaves and servants of other things. They become slavery of money, slaves of money, slaves of their own whims, their own desires, their fancies, their caprice, their nafs. So that is really the alternative then. The other, if a person, they don't become the abd of Allah, then they fall into the other kind of slavery, which then leads to a person's spiritual destruction. Because when you give in to your desires, then your desires are controlling you. You're no longer free. And this is the worst kind of slavery. The deen of Islam came to take a person out of that lower servitude of your own animalistic desires and bring you to this higher exalted maqam of being the Abdullah, the servant and slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And interestingly, the surah ends also with the mention of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just like the surah began with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ilahiyat and ends with rububiyat, the surah begins with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and also ends with the mention of him at the end as well. Another thing to remember about this word abd, we already said that this is the greatest spiritual maqam, rank a person can get. This is actually the reason why people do zikr of Allah. Why a person remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abundantly, so that they attain such a love for Allah in their heart. And this love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is such an amazing emotion that it takes away all the unlawful loves from a person's heart. It erases the love for ghairullah, all things other than Allah. It removes the love of dunya, of name, of fame. The heart is filled with the love for Allah. But interestingly, on this path, on this journey, this is not the end. One might think that I've attained this rank, now I have the love for Allah in my heart. I've reached my destination. The scholars, they say, no, this is not the final destination. There's one step, one further step, which is what? Which is that when your heart is filled with the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now you should try to live a life that is pleasing to your beloved. Because of this muhabba love, you now want to live a life every moment, every second that is pleasing in the sight of your beloved. That becomes the overriding concern. That is what a person is overly preoccupied with. Every moment they're thinking that how can I please my beloved? For example, a mother, she tries to please her son. A son tries to please his parents. And in muhabbat, it's not just about loving the other person, it's also about trying to please the other person. So now a person begins to think that how can I please my Allah Ta'ala? And this takes a person higher. This takes a person even higher, and they attain the maqam of rada, the maqam, the rank of the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. That I want to attain the pleasure of Allah, that becomes the goal of my life. Now, this is a greater rank. First was maqami muhabba, the stage of loving Allah. Beyond that, the higher level is maqami rada, the stage of pleasure, where a person tries to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they also become pleased with the decree of Allah. That my beloved, whatever halat, whatever circumstances he keeps me in, I'm pleased. There is wisdom, there is khair, there is afiyah for me. I trust my Lord, I trust my Allah Ta'ala, and I'm pleased with the decree that has been decreed by my Lord for me. Even outwardly, if there are difficult situations, there are tests, there are exams, there are losses, a person still in the heart of their heart, they feel content, knowing that this is the decree of Allah, and Allah Ta'ala has willed this for me, and Allah Ta'ala has willed nothing but goodness for me. There is khair in every decision that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for me. Alhamdulillahi ala kulli halin. That I praise Allah for every hal. All praise belongs to Allah, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what my individual situation is. This is a very high and an exalted rank. That a person attains the rank of Rada. And when a person attains this maqam of Rada, after this comes the final, the ultimate rank, which is maqam abd, which this ayat is mentioning. Abd, abdiyat. Because now truly you become the servant of Allah. You become truly the servant of Allah, the slave of Allah, that I'm pleased and razi with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for me. This is called abd. And this is the miraj, the spiritual exaltation of a believer that a person can get in this dunya. And interestingly, when the Prophet ﷺ went for Miraj, and Allah mentions that in the Quran, the word that Allah Ta'ala chose for the Prophet ﷺ for that journey was also abd. Subhanallazi asra bi abdihi laylam min al masjid al harami ila al masjid al aqsa. Abd. And the reason, if you look at the ayat here, right after abd, Allah Ta'ala has mentioned kitab. That praise belongs to Allah who has sent down the kitab to his abd. This is an indication that Quran, this kitab is referring to the Quran, obviously. Quran Azim o Shan is that book that is sent by Allah with this purpose, with this goal, that it teaches a person how to become the abd of Allah. That's the rabt. How a person can attain this maqam abadiyat, this high, great spiritual rank, by following the teachings of the Quran, the message of the Quran, understanding that message, living that message, one can attain this maqam abadiyat. So we should try to become the abd of Allah. Make this our dua, make this our effort, that Allah make me a true abd, true abd. In our English language, we normally translate abd as slaves. And again, if you go back to the old times when there used to be slavery in the world, we know that when Islam came, it incentivized measures to free slaves and get rid of slavery. But if you again go back to the old times, you had this phenomena of transatlantic trade, slave trade. So what was the core relationship? There used to be a master and a slave, Malik and Abd. And for the slave, the be all and end all of their life used to be their master. The slave, the be all and end all of their life used to be their master. And that's exactly the word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is choosing here. That we are not just, one thing is that you have a servant, right? Servant is different. Servant, you pay them salary and they do what you tell them to do. You have an employee, which is even further away. They get a wage and then they're told the do's and don'ts of their job. A servant is one step ahead, that they try to help you, serve you, assist you, and they're also being paid. Slave is even beyond that. That their be all and end all of life is their master, is their master. And in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the word abd has another dimension, yet another dimension, which is in the dunya, slaves, they don't do sajda, they don't do worship, they don't do ibadah of their master. But we are abd. Abdullah means that for us, the be all and end all of our life is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so much so to the extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only object of our worship as well. He is our goal. With, above everything else, we have to rank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our life. That He is the be all and end all of it, end all of our life. People have different goals. You can have secondary goals, and people have different goals in their life. Some people are living, today we say goal-oriented life. People are money-oriented lives where money becomes center stage. For other people, their career takes center stage, overly preoccupied with their career. All their efforts, thinking, energies are directed towards their career, sacrificing everything else for the sake of their career-oriented life, career-centered life. For some people, it's about reputation and their name, their fame, their prestige. That matters a lot above everything else. They're willing to sacrifice money, willing to make other sacrifices just in order to save their reputation-centered life. For some people, it's about their family, their parents, or their children, parent-centered, children-centered, spouse-centered. These relationships become so center stage. They become so overly preoccupied with these relationships that everything else becomes secondary. They sacrifice everything else for the sake of these relationships. Some people, they are oriented about their neighbors, about their rivals, that what is this person doing? Preoccupied with what's happening in the lives of others around them, neighbor-centered lives. Some people are centered about their enemy, about their mukhalifin, their opposition, that if I do this, that this person will respond in this manner. Their whole life is spent like that, thinking about what the other person will do to me and how I can save myself. We see that there are different people living lives where their goals are different. If you look in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that for a believer, they're meant to live a Allah-centered life. For us, the answer should be very simple. We are supposed to live an Allah-oriented life, Allah-centered life, where everything else is secondary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is top in the ranking in that list for us. We can sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we cannot sacrifice Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for anything else. We can sacrifice everything, whether it's career, whether it's money, whether it's family, whatever it is, everything can be sacrificed for the sake of Allah. And what is interesting and beautiful is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never takes, Allah ta'ala wants sacrifice from us, but He doesn't take that sacrifice. He wants that sacrifice, but He doesn't take it. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was told to sacrifice his son, but Allah ta'ala never took his sacrifice. This is the test. Allah wishes to see, and this is, Allah knows already what the answer is. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to make us aware, make us realize, make us recognize that, oh, my servant, see for yourself, where have you ranked me in your list of priorities? Your career, your money, your children, your family, your parents, your neighbors. Where have you placed me in that list? Where do I rank for you? And when you rank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala below something else, Allah ta'ala will make that thing which is above Allah a means of test and a trial for you. That you made this dominant primary, you made me subordinate to that. From that very same source, Allah gives us some calamity, some parishani, some musibah, some difficulty. You made a career your number one, you ranked career above and over me. From that very same career, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends some difficulty. You put your children over me, Allah makes our children a test and a trial for us. You put your spouse over me, Allah makes a spouse a test for an imtihan for a person. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. That when Allah ta'ala sees that we have done the wrong ranking, wrong listing, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us see that. Allah ta'ala tests us and some examine our life so that we can correct, we can place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the top. Allah-centered life. And what is so beautiful is that if anyone can make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the top, the living Allah-centered, Allah-oriented life, where their goal, primary, dominant goal is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so kind and merciful. Allah gives you everything else in that list. This is the ease in our deen. This is the ease. This is the secret. That you make Allah ta'ala your goal and Allah ta'ala give you everything else. Will give you money, will give you career, will give you family, will give you relations, will give you everything else that you need, provided you put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the top of that list. Live Allah-oriented lives. And the best example, there are many people who are living Allah-oriented lives. The best, the most complete, the perfect example of someone living an Allah-oriented life is that of the Prophet ﷺ. There is no greater example than that. The greatest example is the Prophet ﷺ. Abd. Alhamdulillahi allazi anzala ala abdihil kitab. This kitab is referring to the Quran. Surah Baqarah also begins with this kitab, Alif Lam Mim, Zalikal Kitab. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls this Quran as Kitab, Al-Kitab, the book because it contains stories, commandments, examples, nasiha, guidance, advice, gives us details. And the the first quality that Allah Ta'ala mentions about this kitab, about the Quran here in this ayah, is walam yaj'al lahu iwaja. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this book, and this book does not have any crookedness in it. No crookedness in it. Yani, this is a kitab which doesn't have any deficiency, any inadequacy, anything which will be a defect or a flaw. This is a kitab which is free from every kind of defect and flaw, which is above and beyond every type of flaw. This is transcends human. This is not human kalam. Humans are deficient. Their kalam, their speech is also deficient. There are inaccuracies in their speech. When humans speak, there can be flaws, there can be faults, there can be mistakes. This kitab transcends human. It's the origin is divine. This is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And hence, there is no inadequacy in this kitab. There is no contradiction. There is no mistake. There is no error. There is not even the slightest deficiency and crookedness in it. Lam yaj'al lahu iwaja. And then qayyiman. Allah Ta'ala brings a second word here. Qayyiman. That it's a straight forward book. Now, this doesn't really capture the word qayyim. Qayyim means it's a straight book and means two things. Number one, the book itself is clear and straight, guides the person to the straight path. There's no crookedness in it. So there's an emphasis that there's no curvature. It's a straight, clear message. And secondly, it also means that this is a book which enables a person to stand in an upright manner, to live their life in a straight, upright manner, to remain qaim, to remain established. So it's a book that enables a person to be steadfast, to be qaim, to be straight, to be virtuous. Both meanings are present in this one word, qayyiman. The book itself is straight and clear and enables a person to stand upright, virtuous, and tread this path in a way that is pleasing to Allah. Qayyiman. Yani qa'iman ala al-kutub as-samawiyyati kulliha. That it's a book which enables a person to stand on the message of Allah, stand upright. So this is one of the mu'jiza, the miracle, the ijaz of the Quran, that there is no crookedness in it. There is no contradiction in it. You compare any other book, you find contradictions. Even the Bible, which is man-made, there are so many lessons online. You can YouTube and you can find the 20 errors in the Bible, 20 errors in this book, 20 errors in that book. In Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has safeguarded the Quran. There's not one error. Many people have tried to find errors, find mistakes, find inadequacies, but all of those efforts have failed. Many people, Quran makes an open challenge that if you can bring any ayat comparable to the Quran, then bring so. combine all of your strength, all of your helpers, and try to bring even one ayat that is comparable to the message of the Quran, one ayat comparable to the Quran, it's an open challenge for all of it, for all of Qiyamah, till the very Qiyamah, till the last day. And even with AI, right? Artificial, these days, there's a lot of talk about AI. And subhanallah, right? The Quran, this is the mu'jiza that we as Muslims, we believe that with no matter what the technology is, we don't know what the future technologies would be like, but this is an open challenge for till the very last day. That humans combined with all of the technologies, they will not be able to bring even one ayat that is comparable to the stature of the Quran. So it's a book of izzat that brings izzat and honor to a person who recites it, who lives it. It's a book which is clear. It's a book which is straightforward. It's a book which doesn't have any curvature. It's mustaqim, sirate mustaqim. And it's a book which enables the person to tread on the path of sirate mustaqim. Now, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveal this Quran? So here Allah Ta'ala in verse number 2, Allah mentions three reasons. Three wisdom, three hikmat behind revealing the Quran. The first thing that Allah Ta'ala mentions, the first hikmat, is liyunzira ba'san shadidan min ladunhu. Allah revealed this Quran to warn of a severe punishment from Him. To warn of a severe punishment from Him. Those who don't bring Iman, they don't do righteous deeds. So the Quran is warning them about accountability. Don't think that YOLO, you only live once. Don't think that this life is the be all and end all. Don't think that when a person dies, everything ends. Rather, there will be accountability. There is another realm after this world, akhirah, and there will be full, complete justice and accountability. A person will have to answer for how they lived their life. It's a warning. It's a warning. It's a warning for the people. This is the usloob that the Quran contains a warning. It also contains glad tidings. For those who don't believe, there is a warning. There is an account punishment. And for those who do believe, there is an enticement, there is a glad tidings which was given to them about the rewards in Akhirah. In this ayat, normally the usloob of the Quran, you see, is that first Allah Ta'ala mentions the glad tidings and then Allah mentions the warning. And that's normally how we operate as well. We don't want to first tell all the warnings and then we tell the glad tidings. The carrot and the stick. There is also a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that Abashiru wala tunaffiru, that give glad tidings to people when you speak to them and do not say things which can make them which they don't like, which they might hate. So give glad tidings. But here in this ayat, we see that first Allah Ta'ala mentions inzar, the warning, liyunzira, and then Allah mentions wa yubashshira, that Allah gives good news, glad tidings to the believers. Why is that? Why warning first and glad tidings later? The reason here is that there is a principle that daf'ul makruh muqaddamun ala tahsil al-matlub, that to remove the disliked things takes precedence over attaining desirable things. Or you can call this that acquiring benefit is important, but to remove harm is more important. Precaution is better than cure. Doing good deeds is important, but staying away from sins is even more important. So, ba'san shadidan, it's warning of a severe punishment. Now, the punishments can be of different types. Normally, people understand the punishment that there will be a fire, there will be the accountability, there will be the fire of Jahannam. And at one level, yes, those ayat are there in the Quran. But for someone who loves Allah Ta'ala, wanting to come close to Allah Ta'ala, a seeker of Allah, the greatest, the most severe punishment on that day will be that that person will be deprived, a person will be deprived of the vision of Allah Ta'ala. This will be the ba'san shadidan for the believers, for the sinning believers, for the seekers of Allah. Ba'san shadidan, to be deprived of the vision of Allah. Allah says in Quran elsewhere that innahum an rabbihim yawma idhin lamahjubun. There will be some people on that day, they will be hijab, they will be deprived of the vision of their Lord. Our life here on this earth, in this world, it's all about trying to attain that vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in akhirah. This is such an important goal of our life. Imam Shafi rahmatullah said that if I did not have certainty about the vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in akhirah, then I wouldn't have even worshipped in this dunya. Any ibadat, the goal of ibadat in this dunya is to be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in akhirah. So this is the first hikmat of sending the Quran as a warning. وَيُبَشِّرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا حَسَنًا. Now the second hikmat, the second wisdom behind sending the Quran is to give the glad tidings to the believers who do righteous deeds that they will have an excellent reward. They will have Jannah. So, to give glad tidings, Bashir, to give glad tidings to who? To the mu'mineen. Now, this loves mu'mineen is telling us that the good and the glad tidings are for those who are people who are true in their iman, mu'min. It's higher than alladina amanu. It's higher than simply reciting the kalama and becoming a Muslim. Mu'min is a higher rank. Mu'min means someone who's true in their iman. True. They're adorned with this attribute of iman. And Allah mentions about these people, alladhina ya'maluna salihat, those who do righteous deeds. We see this, that wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions glad tidings for the believers, there is also side by side mention of amal salih, the need to do righteous deeds. Mu'min was Iman, Aqidah, and then immediately after that, Allah mentions that people who practice, people who are practicing believers. Right? So this glad tiding is for the practicing believers. Today we have a new term, non-practicing Muslims, who call themselves Muslims, but they don't pray, they don't fast. So the Quran is speaking that this glad tiding is for the practicing believers, people of Iman, but also people who do righteous deeds. Just like correcting and rectifying our Aqidah is important. We don't do kufr, we don't do shirk. We have the right beliefs. In the same way, it's also important to have the right actions with those beliefs. There are over 50 places in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has joined Iman and Amal Salih. Iman and Amal Salih. Amal as-Salih. A person will enter Jannah based upon their Iman, but the rank that they will attain in Jannah will be dependent upon their Amal, on their good deeds. For every good deed, they will have a higher rank in Jannah, so much so that if there is a person who said Subhanallah once, they said Subhanallah one more than the other person, one time more than the other person, they will have a higher rank in Jannah than this individual. Amal. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mean here? Ya'maluna salihat. What are the righteous deeds? What are the amalu salih? Every amal, all actions are included here, where the goal is to attain the rada, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and which are done according to the Quran, Sunnah, and Sharia. So, again, the lesson for us is that we should try to preoccupy ourselves with amalu salih throughout the day, 24/7. Even when we work at office or wherever, we should try to make that also an amal, an amal salih. Do it with the niyat, with the intention of pleasing Allah Ta'ala, to attain the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. This is rizq halal, earning rizq halal. You do it with the intention to please Allah Ta'ala and ensure that we don't violate any command of Allah Ta'ala in that process. You don't cheat, you don't lie, you don't bribe, you don't deceive, you don't hurt and harm others. If a person works like that, where they're trustworthy, where they're sincere, where they don't cheat, then the entire time that a person is working, all of that counts as amalu salih, amale salih. Person will be given a reward for that. So, similarly, cleaning, cooking, eating, sleeping, all of these mundane actions of the day, if we can do them with the right intention, with the niyat of attaining the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not violating any commands of the Quran, Sunnah, and Sharia, all of these things they become good deeds, and a person will be rewarded for that. This is the life of a salik, of a seeker of Allah, where every moment they're trying to accumulate as many good deeds as they can in this dunya. And then Allah mentions, Anna lahum ajran hasana, that they will have an excellent reward. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran so that through the Quran, Allah will send a warning to those who don't believe, and for the believers who do righteous deeds, Allah gives them this glad news, glad tidings that they will have the most excellent reward. This word Ajre Hasan, the Mufassirin, the scholars have written that this refers to that reward which is much, much greater than the action a person has done. Normally, in the dunya, compensation is equitable. You do this much work and you get this much money, right? It's proportional to the work that you do. Ajr Hasan means that the reward will be disproportionate. The reward will be much, 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 much more than the action a person has done. Subhanallah. And the Mufassirin, they also say that Ajr Hasan means that action which a person who did it, they don't even remember I did this good deed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring all of those good deeds and Allah ta'ala will reward that person. And one of the mashayikh of Indo-Pak region, Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanvi Rahmatullah alayh, in his tafsir, he said that Ajr Hasana means something else. He said that this is referring to the didar, the vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah, the ru'ya, the mushahida, that there will be some blessed people, fortunate people, makbul servants of Allah ta'ala, who will get to see Allah ta'ala without any hijab, without any veil. So we should try that we do every amal with such a presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our heart. In Hadith Mubarak it comes that Anta abudallaha ka'annaka tara fa'in lam takun tarahu fa'innahu yara. That worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a way as if you see him, or else at least know that he sees you. Anta amala lillahi ka'annaka tara. Every action, do it in such a way as if you see Allah. As if you see Allah. This kafiyat, this condition of the heart is known as ihsan, which is the goal of tazkiyah and tasawwuf. And when a person does these amalu salih with that condition of heart, with that kafiyat of ihsan, as if you see Allah or as if Allah is with you, aware that Allah Ta'ala is with you and looking at you, then a person will be blessed with this ni'mat of didar on the day of Qiyam. They will be blessed with this ni'mat of this vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that day of Qiyam. Ma kisina fihi abada. That this ajr that they will get, it's not one-time reward. They will dwell therein forever. And one thing is to get a reward, and the other thing is to be perpetually rewarded every single moment of your life. Subhanallah. Look at the ayat, the link. So beautiful that you will not only get the in'am, the ajr, but you will get dawame in'am. You will get it perpetually, forever. These people, they will dwell therein forever in that excellent reward. Our mashayikh, they say, a person, whoever lives the life of taqwa, tahara, purity, piety, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them this ajr hasana. And this will manifest itself in akhirah in the form of jannat. They will get jannat in akhirah. But secondly, they will get this ajr hasana in the dunya as well. This will manifest itself in the dunya in the form of hayat tayyibah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them a pure, pristine, beautiful life in the dunya as well. A person will be living here in the dunya, but they will feel as if I'm living in Jannat. They will be getting spiritual happiness and spiritual joy and a spiritual delight while living here in the dunya. Such a spiritual delight, a delight of the ruh, delight of the heart, a tranquility, a serenity, and itminan, a solace in their heart, which will be far, far, far greater than any physical delight that a person could have experienced in this dunya. This is the reason why the people of Allah, people close to Allah, they're willing to sacrifice the worldly delights for the sake of the spiritual delights, the delights of the ruh, the delights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept in the deen. These people, they are basking in these spiritual delights. These delights about being in the presence of Allah Ta'ala, the presence of Allah, the huzuri of Allah, the kayfiyat, the condition of being with Allah, being in the companionship of Allah Ta'ala every single moment. Ma kisina fihi abada. And then comes the third hikmat for sending the Quran. Allah Ta'ala mentions, وَيُنْذِرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. And to warn those who have said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has had a son. This is about Aqidah. And we see that in the Makkan period, the first 13 years of Nabuwa, after the Prophet manifested his Nabuwa, several ayat and the emphasis was on Aqidah. So many ayat of the Quran, they would expound, they would give the details about the right Aqidah. Ayat about obligations and about ahkam, they were few in the first 13 years. For example, fasting and zakat and hajj, these are mentioned later on. But the first 13 years, the emphasis was on Aqidah, so that the people are able to gain an understanding of the correct Aqidah. And that is why there is a lot of ayat that speak about Tawheed and Nabuwat and life after death. Life after death. So here we see that this ayat is about Aqidah. There are some people who would say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a child. The idol worshippers, they would say that Allah ta'ala has taken angels, malaika, as his daughters, alayadu billah. They would call angels as the daughters of Allah. The Jews had their opinion. They held that Hazrat Uzair alayhi salam was the son of Allah. And the Christians had their belief that Hazrat Isa alayhi salam is the son of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All three groups, they believed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a child. It was only the Muslims, the believers, who had this full yaqeen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have any child. Kul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid walam yulad, walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. The Surah Ikhlas, is one of the greatest testimony and introduction about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. That He is one, He is unique, He is independent, and He does not beget anyone, nor is He begotten. And there is no one comparable to Him. This is the Aqidah of Tawheed. This is the Aqidah that the Quran brought. There is one Hadith Mubarakah in which it's mentioned that on the day of Qiyamah, there will be an announcer who will make an announcement that every group should follow that whom they used to follow in the dunya. And then after this announcement, all those people who would worship idols, worshipped anyone other than Allah, they will be punished. And only those will be saved who worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, who worshipped Allah ta'ala exclusively. Whether they are pious or sinful, they will be saved. Similarly, even among the Ahle Kitab, the people of the book, there will be some people who will be saved. And these would be those who worshipped Allah exclusively only and purely they worshipped Allah, irrespective whether they were pious or impious. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call the Jews and ask them, then ma kuntum ta'budun, that who would you worship, who used to worship in the dunya? And they would say, kunna na'budu Uzair ibn Allah, that in the dunya we would worship Hazrat Uzair, who was the son of Allah. And then it will be said to them that you are lying, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not have any spouse nor any son. Now what do you want? So they will say that Atishna ya Rabbana fasqina, that, oh our Lord, we are thirsty, we want water. And it will be said to them by indication that why aren't you going towards the water? And then they will be taken to the fire, a place where they will be given water, hot boiling water in the fire, and will be placed therein forever. Then the Christians would be called, I'll be asked, that ma kuntum ta'budun, that who did you worship while you were there in the dunya? And they would say, kunna na'budul masih ibn Allah, that we worshipped Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, we thought was the son of Allah. And it will be said to them that kazabatum, that you are lying. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not have any spouse, nor did he beget any son. And it will be said to them that what do you wish? And they would also say that Atishna, Ya Rabbana, we are thirsty, we want water. And then they will also be taken to the fire. They will be punished there in the fire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the things that invites the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to attribute partners to Allah. To attribute that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a son or something like that. In Hadith Mubarakah, which is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari Sharif, Allah Ta'ala says that Kazabani ibn Adam walam yakullahu zalik. That human beings, they deny me. And they shouldn't have done that. They deny me they deny me by saying that after I give them death, I cannot resurrect them. This is how they deny me. And washatamani, they curse me. And they shouldn't have cursed me. And the way they curse me is by saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a child, has children, even though for subhani, I'm pure from what they're saying. That I don't have any spouse, any companion, nor do I have any son. I'll just end with one very powerful dua that Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah has mentioned. This is the dua to attain the nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the qurb of Allah ta'ala. That whoever wants to attain the qurb, closeness and nearness, they want to increase in the love for Allah, he said that they should make this dua every day. Make it part of their daily regimen. This dua was mentioned by Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah, who was blessed with the didar, the vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his dream 100 times during his life. And it's mentioned that the 100th time when he was blessed with the vision of Allah Ta'ala in a dream, in that dream he asked Allah Ta'ala that, "Ya Allah, your servants, they want to draw close to you. What should they recite?" And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught this dua. What is that dua? So there are some phrases here. Say them in Arabic and then translate them. Subhan al-abadi, Subhan al-abadi al-abad. Subhan al-abadi al-abad. That pure is that being who is from pre-eternity and will live till eternity, will live forever. Subhan al-abadi al-abad. Subhan al-wahid al-ahad. Greatness is for that being who is one and unique. Subhan al-farad. Subhan al-farad is samad. And greatness and purity is for that being who is alone and independent. Subhana rafi'is sama'i bila amad. And greatness is for that being who raised the sky without any pillars. Subhana man basata al-arda ala ma'in jamad. The greatness is for that being who laid down the earth on the water. Subhana man khalaqa al-khalqa fa ahsahum adad. That greatness is for that being who created creation and counted them one by one. Subhana man qasama rizqa wa lam yansa ahad. Greatness is for that being who distributed rizq and did not forget anyone. Subhana alladhi lam yattakhiz sahibatan wala walad. Greatness is for that being who doesn't have any wife nor any children. Subhana alladhi lam yalid walam yulad walam yakullahu kufuwan ahad. And greatness is for that being who does not beget, nor is he begotten, and there is none comparable to him. We make dua to Allah Ta'ala that may Allah Ta'ala grant us such a strength in our iman, such a yaqeen, such a ta'alluq and a connection with him. And may Allah Ta'ala enable all of us as well to live a life where our goal becomes to attain the pleasure and the rada of Allah Ta'ala. May Allah Ta'ala grant us this maqam of rada and this maqam of abdiyat. May Allah Ta'ala accept this dua from all of us tonight. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله خيرا كثيرا.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.